Welcome to John Carter Stories. The door was ajar, just barely open, like it had been left that way by accident, or maybe fate. I don't know. I stood there in the hallway of our apartment building, keys in hand, promotion letter folded neatly inside my jacket pocket, and I just smiled to myself. 3 years. 3 long, exhausting, coffee-fueled years of working myself to bone, and it had finally happened. Director. A corner office, a company apartment, a future I could actually see clearly for the first time. Please subscribe and like this video, and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is James. I'm 36 years old, and what I'm about to tell you is the story of how I walked through a door as one man and came out the other side as someone I barely recognized. I pushed the door open quietly, wanted to surprise my wife, Claire. I could already hear her voice, warm and laughing, mixing with her sister's voice from somewhere inside the apartment. That laugh. God, I used to love that laugh. It sounded like something light and easy, like she didn't have a care in the world. I was smiling as I stepped inside. I was still smiling when I heard what she said. Completely useless. Those were the first 2 words that reached me. I slowed down. Completely useless in bed. Like, genuinely pathetic. I don't know how I've lasted this long pretending to enjoy it. And then her sister laughed. That same kind of casual, careless laugh women share when they think no one important is listening. Why do you stay? And Claire's answer came fast. Too fast. Like she'd been waiting for someone to ask. The money. Obviously. He's stable. Boring but stable. Once I get pregnant, I'll have everything I need. He'll be so thrilled to be a father that he won't even notice I'm sleeping with someone else. The keys in my hand felt like ice. I didn't move. I couldn't. I stood in my own hallway, in the home I paid for, in the life I had worked myself in the ground to build, and I felt the ground just dissolve beneath my feet. She appeared in the hallway a moment later, still laughing at something her sister had said, and then she stopped dead. The color left her face, like someone had pulled a plug. "James," she started, but I was already walking past her. Steady, hands not shaking, which surprised me. My chest felt like something had been removed from it, but my hands were perfectly steady. I walked to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the wall. She followed me slowly, like she was approaching something she wasn't sure was safe. "Tell me everything," I said quietly, starting with who he is. And that's when she understood that the man she thought she'd married was gone. Whatever was sitting on that bed, looking at her with eyes she didn't recognize, was something she had never planned for. She told me his name was Ryan, a personal trainer at her gym. She'd been seeing him for 8 months. 8 months of Sunday mornings she'd come home from the gym smelling like someone else's deodorant, and I believed every single excuse. 8 months of "I'm tired tonight," and "I've got a headache," and "you just don't understand me lately." She confessed everything in a rush, like honesty might save her, like if she just poured it all out fast enough, it would somehow soften what she'd done. It wouldn't. I listened without a single word. The affair, the plan to get pregnant, the timeline she had mapped out, the child support research she had done, the way she had been calculating exactly how much of my life she could carry away with her after the divorce she had always intended to file. I was a wallet with a heartbeat. That night, I sat in the guest room while she cried herself to sleep in our bed, and I made a list, not of what I'd lost, of what I could take from her. Stay with me, because what happened next will make your jaw drop, and what happened after that changed me in ways I never expected. You know that feeling when everything around you goes quiet, not peaceful quiet, but the kind of quiet that means something has shifted permanently? That's what the next morning felt like. I called Claire's parents and asked them to meet me for coffee. Her father, a serious man who had always seemed to like me more than his daughter deserved, arrived with her mother, looking worried. I sat across from them in a cafe booth and slid my phone across the table without a word. The messages between Claire and Ryan. The dating app still installed on her phone. Screenshots of her telling her sister she had been faking everything for years. Conversations about the pregnancy plan, written out in her own words, clear as day. Her mother's hand went over her mouth. Her father looked at the phone, then at me, then back at the phone. "Why are you showing us this?" he asked, because I said, keeping my voice very calm, "Your daughter is about to try to trap me with a child. And I thought you should know what kind of person she really is before she does the same thing to someone else." I left before either of them could find words. By afternoon, Claire was calling me so many times my phone screen wouldn't go dark. Her parents had frozen her out of the family business, cut off her access to the accounts, asked her to leave the house until she sorted herself out. She was unraveling, and I was just getting started. Ryan didn't know what was coming. I hired someone to photograph him, not just with Claire, because that was already done and already known, but in other moments. The moments where he was texting his actual girlfriend, the woman he'd been with before Claire had added him to her collection of lies. His girlfriend, a woman named Dana who had no idea what kind of man she was with, received an anonymous package in the mail. Photos, screenshots, dates and times and receipts. She left him within days. And then Ryan did to Claire exactly what Claire had planned to do to me. He ghosted her. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. The kind that says everything without saying a word. I watched Claire sit by her phone waiting for a message that was never going to come, and I felt something dark and quiet settle in my chest. Something that should have felt like satisfaction, but felt more like standing in an empty house where something used to live. I wasn't done. Claire worked in social media marketing. She was genuinely talented at it, which was perhaps the one real thing about her. She had access to her clients' accounts, handled their budgets, managed their campaigns. I went looking through things I should have looked at years ago and found discrepancies in her expense reports. Nothing that crossed into criminal territory, but enough to raise flags. Enough to make a compliance department nervous. I reported it anonymously. An investigation was launched. She came home one evening pale and trembling. "They're auditing everything," she said. "They think I've been stealing." "Have you?" I asked. "No, but James, this could ruin me." "Then you have nothing to worry about," I said, and I poured myself a glass of water and went back to reading my book. We both knew what an investigation like that does to a career, even when it finds nothing. The accusation alone was enough. Future employers would see the flag. References would be poisoned. She had built her entire identity on being admired, on being the successful one, the impressive one. I was systematically taking that away from her, piece by piece, day by day. By week 3, she had lost her job, been cut off from her family, been abandoned by the man she had risked her marriage for, and she was sitting in our apartment with nothing but the wreckage of her own choices surrounding her like the debris of a building she had dynamited herself. She finally looked at me one evening with eyes that had stopped calculating entirely. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, and I smiled because I finally had her full attention. "I want you to understand," I said, "what it feels like to have everything taken away." Keep watching, because what she said next and what happened after that is a part of the story I never expected to be telling. She signed the divorce papers without even reading them. I had been thorough. The apartment was in my name, purchased with my signing bonus before we ever married. The savings accounts were in my name alone. The car was registered to me. Everything we had supposedly built together, I had built alone, and I had quietly made sure there was nothing she could claim. She got the clothes in her closet and whatever dignity she had left, which was not much. By the end of that week, Claire had moved into a small studio apartment in a neighborhood we used to drive through and make comments about from the safety of our car. Too rough, we'd say. Too far from everything. Now, it was the best she could afford on unemployment benefits. Her sister called me. Your voice was sharp and cold, like a blade. "You've destroyed her," she said. "No," I replied. "She destroyed herself." I just made sure she had to live with the consequences. I hung up before she could say another word. That night, I sat in my company apartment, the one that came with my new director title, surrounded by the life I had worked for, and I felt nothing. The revenge was complete. Every piece had fallen exactly where I had placed it. Claire had lost her job, her family's trust, her financial security, her relationship, and her carefully planned future all at once. Ryan had lost his girlfriend and moved on without a scratch. But that was a detail. I tried not to think about too much. The plan had worked perfectly, and I felt absolutely nothing. I started going to therapy a few weeks later. My therapist was a quiet man who listened more than he spoke, which I appreciated. He asked me one question in our third session that I could not answer. What were you protecting? He asked. When you decided to destroy her. I sat with that question for a long time. And then, 12 days after the divorce was finalized, Claire's sister called me again. This time her voice was different. This time it was not cold and cutting. It was shaking. Claire had taken pills. She had called 911 before they took effect. She had survived. Stomach pumped, 72-hour psychiatric hold. Alive. I sat down on my kitchen floor. When I heard that, just sat down on the cold tile and stared at the wall. It was my fault, her sister said. Voice breaking. You push her too far. You're a monster. Maybe she was right. I went to visit Claire in the psychiatric hospital. She was smaller somehow, wearing a hospital gown, sitting in a chair by a window that looked out at a gray sky. She looked like a person who had been emptied out. When she saw me, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't say anything. I just sat across from her in that sterile, quiet room and felt something shift in my chest, something tighten, something that had nothing to do with victory. Destroying her had required me to become someone I did not recognize. I had targeted her vulnerabilities like a surgeon. I had turned her family against her. I had orchestrated the collapse of her career and watched her fall in love with a man who used her exactly the way she had planned to use me. And I had orchestrated that too. I had done all of it with the cold, patient satisfaction of someone executing a perfect plan. When had I become that person? What happens now? She asked from the hospital bed. I don't know, I said. And that was the first honest thing I had said in months. This story is not over. Stay with me. Part 4 is where everything I thought I understood got turned inside out. She was released on a Thursday. Antidepressants. Mandatory therapy. A list of emergency contacts. She was supposed to call if things got dark again. I had already instructed my lawyer to revise the divorce settlement, not out of kindness. I want to be clear about that, because I think it is important to be honest about who I was at that point. I was not capable of kindness anymore, but I was capable of something. Recognition, maybe, a cold, reluctant acknowledgement that absolute victory had cost me something I had not budgeted for. She received a small monthly amount, not enough to live comfortably, enough to survive, enough to rebuild if she chose to. She almost refused it. Her sister told me she had sat with the letter for 2 days before accepting, and only because she had nothing else. I started volunteering at a community center, teaching financial literacy classes to people who were rebuilding their lives from nothing. I told myself it was not about redemption. I told myself I just needed to feel like I was building something instead of tearing things down, because the tear had left me hollow in a way the promotion and the apartment and the corner office could not touch. I saw Claire sometimes at the community center, studying in the library, preparing for nursing exams. She had enrolled in a program at a community college, starting from the bottom of a profession built entirely on helping other people. She didn't speak to me. I didn't speak to her, but I watched, and I felt something I could not name for a long time. One evening we ended up at the same coffee station in the break room, and the silence between us was so thick it had texture. "Hello, James," she said quietly. "Hi, I managed. I'm starting night shifts at the hospital next month," she said, looking at the coffee machine and not at me. "It's not much, but it's honest work." I nodded. My throat had closed. "I don't hate you," she said finally. She said to the coffee machine, to the wall, to the floor, anywhere but my face. "I think I should, but I don't. I just feel sad for what we both became because of what I did." She walked out before I could find words, and I stood there holding a paper cup of lukewarm coffee and understood, for the first time with complete clarity, what I had done. I had won. I had executed my plan with precision and patience, and I had won completely, and I was still alone. Ryan, the man at the center of all of this, had moved to another city, new girlfriend, new life, no consequences whatsoever for his role in the destruction. He had walked through the fire I had started and come out the other side without a single scorch mark, while Claire and I had both burned. Justice, I was beginning to understand, is not what revenge looks like. I sat in my therapist's office the following week and said it out loud for the first time. I became someone I don't respect. I targeted another person's weaknesses and called it justice. I watched her fall apart and felt satisfied. I don't know how to come back from that. My therapist looked at me for a long time. He said, that awareness is the beginning of coming back from it. I did not believe him then. I am starting to believe him now. Stay with me for the final part, because 6 months later, something happened that I never saw coming. And what Claire said to me changed something I thought was permanent. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a photo from Claire's sister. I almost didn't open it. We were not exactly on warm terms. But something made me tap the notification. It was Claire, cap and gown, community college graduation ceremony, nursing program complete. And she was smiling, not the practiced social media smile I had known for years, not the performative warmth she used to turn on and off like a faucet. This was something else, something that came from a place she had built herself, with nothing from the rubble. I put my phone down and sat with that photo for a long time. Then I looked around at my apartment, my director title, my corner office and my company car, and my carefully protected assets. My perfectly executed victory. I had everything I had fought for, and she was the one who was smiling. I reached out through her sister and asked if Claire would be willing to meet me, just for coffee. Neutral ground, no agenda, no lawyers. She agreed. I think that surprised both of us. We sat across from each other in a coffee shop, and I looked at her in her scrubs and her quiet, careful dignity, and I said what I had spent a year building up to saying. I'm sorry, not because it undoes anything. It doesn't, not because you asked for it. You didn't, but because I need to say the truth out loud. I destroyed you deliberately, not in a moment of anger, in a calculated campaign that I planned over weeks. I weaponized everything I knew about you. I turned your family against you. I took apart your career. I watched you fall apart, and I called it justice. And none of it was justice. It was cruelty with a clean face. She was quiet for a moment. I know, she said. I've known for a while. Does it change anything? I asked. No, she said. But it matters that you understand it. We sat in the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Outside the window, the city was doing what cities do. People walking past with their coffees and their earbuds and their private disasters. Claire was wearing scrubs under her jacket, coming from a night shift at the hospital where she had rebuilt her life one patient at a time. I was wearing the suit of a man who had won and discovered that winning without integrity is just a different kind of empty. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I told her. I know, she said. I'm not offering it, but I'm not carrying hatred either. That's too heavy. I put down everything too heavy. She gathered her things and stood to leave. At the door, she turned back, just for a second. Take care of yourself, James, she said. And then she was gone. I stayed at that table for a long time. Long enough for my coffee to go cold. Long enough to watch the afternoon light change through the window. I had spent months building a weapon out of my grief and firing it at another person. She had been wrong. She had been deliberate and calculating, and she had planned to use me as a financial scaffold while she built a life I was never meant to be part of. That was true, but I had chosen what to do with that truth. I had chosen to become a surgeon of suffering. I had chosen to be precise and patient and thorough. I had chosen to call my cruelty by the name of justice and convince myself I was the wrong party exercising righteous consequence. And the real damage, the damage I had not calculated, was not to her career or her family relationships or her finances. The real damage was to the person I had been when I walked into that apartment with a promotion letter in my pocket and love for my wife in my chest. That man was gone. I was still looking for him. I am still looking for him now. Therapy helps. Slowly. The community work helps. The mornings where I wake up and choose to build something rather than tear something down, those help most of all. Claire's a nurse now. She works nights. helps people heal, lives simply and honestly. I think she is happier than she was when she had everything. I think that says something important that I am still learning to hear. Revenge feels like power, and then it feels like a prison, and then it feels like a mirror, and you don't always love what you see. She destroyed herself. Yes, but I chose the kind of man I would be in response. And for a long time, I chose wrong. The hardest thing I have ever done is not forgive her. The hardest thing I have ever done is try to forgive myself. And that, I think, is still going on